Says recording.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to the CivilTalk Podcast. I'm your host, Tapasio Althouse. If you're new to the podcast, this is where we explore civility and social emotional learning in the modern world with esteemed guests, expert insights, and practical advice to help people navigate the world. Today, we're excited to have Associate Vice Provost and Executive Director at the Center for Career Readiness and Life Skills at UCONN, Jim Lowe. Jim works extensively with college students on career readiness and has a wealth of experience in guiding young professionals as they prepare to enter the workforce. His insights on career development, job search strategies, and the importance of civility and emotional intelligence in the workplace are truly invaluable. We are thrilled to have Jim Lowe share his expertise with us today. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks so much for having me, Tapasio. I really appreciate being here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So I'd love to hear more about your background. If you can just, start by telling us a bit about that and how you got into career services and initially working with college students.
So yeah, very briefly, I was on the corporate side, not in higher ed, until about 14 years ago. And my early career was in the retail industry in sales and operations. And I kind of transitioned from that over into HR consulting. Worked in Manhattan for about 16 years for a global HR consulting firm, and got to the point where I just really wanted a career shift and change up what I was doing and leverage my skill set for a different audience. And that's the point at which I came to the University of Connecticut, initially working in the School of Business, heading up their career center for both undergraduate and MBA students. Then I moved from that into an assistant dean role at the School of Business, handling all the non-academic parts of the school. And then the university had a need to expand career services offerings to all students. And really explore how we would do that in a fundamentally different way and become a global leader in career service utilization and serve as a role model for other institutions. So I've been in this role now for, just a little over 10 years and still very excited about it because every year is different and the career landscape changes on a regular basis. So fundamentally, we're not doing any of the work we were doing 10 years ago. We're not even doing any of the work we were doing 5 years ago. Everything continues to morph and change in terms of best practices, how to engage with students, what's important to employers. So it's a constantly changing environment, and that's what keeps it exciting.
Yeah, I bet. I'd love to get sort of a microscopic view of what you do on a day-to-day basis and like how you sort of interact with modern students. Myself included, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners, want to hear about the youth of today and how they're sort of like tackling modern issues and sort of your insights on that.
Yeah, so it has changed. One of the things that we always struggle with as an institution is scalability. How do we scale our services to meet the needs of 32,000 students? And clearly, we're never going to have a staff large enough to meet with every student one-on-one to develop their career plan and their goals and dreams and how they leverage their core competencies in terms of articulating their value proposition, either to employers or potential graduate school applications or those types of things. So from a scalability standpoint, we've really leaned into technology. And that's really what's taken off more than anything else in the past 5 years. So, there is software technology out there that can do just as good a job in helping a student develop their resume as a one-on-one career consultation in-person session can do. And what that allows us to do is have the student leverage that technology, but then meet with us to fine tune and figure out how does this apply to their job search? How does it apply to their goals? All of our data shows that, if a student has a career plan and a career goal, they're about 80% more likely to achieve success in their first job after they graduate And then that success continues to 5 years post-graduation and 10 years post-graduation. So a lot of it really figuring out that mix between the technology piece and how we scale our services to get them to students, as well as the one-on-one piece, whether it's one-on-one with an individual or in a group setting through the workshops and the seminars and all of those types of things that we provide to our students. So for example, last year alone, we presented 450 seminars and workshops campus-wide to students, so that we got the depth and breadth and reach to the student populations on a variety of issues. In addition to that, we saw over 7,000 students one-on-one. So it's kind of that mix and balance. And overarching of all of that is we had about 800,000 page hits to our website that contains all of our technology. So whether it's technology around resume development, whether it's our webinars, whether it's assessments, because there's a whole assessment module on there that students can take to get a sense of, what types of careers are most suitable to me or my major. All of that is encompassed in that really robust, interactive and curated website. Because one of the things we've learned that students are not willing to go to a website that never changes or isn't customized to their needs. So we've curated our website so that students up front put in all of their demographics, their major, the types of jobs they're looking for, all those types of things. And then every time they come to our website, the content is curated for their needs. So an engineering student is never going to see information about nursing jobs. A nursing student isn't ever going to see information about accounting jobs. And that information changes on a regular basis. So every time they go to the website, they're being given feeds on who are alumni who've been successful in their field and alumni recaps. So they really want a personalized experience through the technology, but we're looking to leverage that technology for scale more than anything else.
Yeah, you seem to have, that seems to have career readiness down, and how do you teach life skills? You can do resume, you can do, these are alumni, but how do you sort of grapple and deal with, how do I teach life skills to these college students, maybe not through a screen, and really get it sort of cemented in their head that social emotional learning, soft skills, and civility really matters. And
right.
Resume building is one step, but after that, you really have to have adequate life skills to sort of hold on to your job and, relationships.
Absolutely. Yep. And resume building and resume development was something that was kind of a key component of the services that we offered maybe 10 years ago. It's something that we don't focus on as much now. Instead, we're focusing on building the core competencies. And the core competencies that we utilize here at UCONN are based on the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And they've outlined 8 core competencies through their research that our employers are looking for in early career hire and filling their talent pipelines. So those core competencies aren't technical. They're all the soft skills. So it's communication, it's teamwork, it's critical thinking. It's all of those things. So we embed all of those concepts of those 8 core competencies into everything we do. So whether it's a seminar or a group workshop or a one-on-one meeting, we're always driving those core competencies. The other thing we've done here at UCONN is we've partnered with quite a number of faculty and department heads to start embedding those core competencies in the curriculum so that students are hearing the message in the classroom, they're hearing it from career, they're hearing it from a variety of different angles in terms of what's important. So, we look at things like, a recent Wall Street Journal poll showed that I think it was 89% of senior executives said that they're having trouble finding early talent to fill their pipeline that has the right mix of soft skills and hard skills. So, traditionally at a university, and I'm going way back in the past, the role was teach them the hard skills. If you're an engineering student, it was all about engineering skills, nursing, accounting, whatever it happened to be, with liberal arts being that well-rounded foundation of education that ran throughout the system. Now what we're saying and what we're really seeing is that employers are saying that they're not so much interested in what a student's major or GPA is anymore. We've done joint research with NACE that really shows us that the employer number one thing that they're looking for in terms of early talent hires is a student who's done an internship with them. So that's number one, and that's kind of a given. But number two is students who have done an internship in their industry, not even with their company, but in their industry. Number three is a student who's had a job, either on campus or outside of campus. Number four is major and relevant coursework. So those top three probably weren't even in the top three 20 years ago. It was all about major and GPA. And then the fifth one is having held a leadership position on campus. So when you look at those things that employers are looking for, inherently embedded within them are those core competencies. And one of the, so as we spoke earlier and as you introduced me, our department was just renamed from the Center for Career Development, developing career stuff, to the Center for Career Readiness. And that's really about the core competencies and being career ready and life skills. So as an institution, we've made a commitment to our students through our strategic plan, which was just rolled out, that students will have the opportunity to develop skills in 5 essential life skills of emotional intelligence, financial literacy, creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So that all falls under the Center for Career Readiness and Life Skills now, as we're newly named. And that new name is being launched as students come back this fall semester. So that's a relatively new thing that we've engaged in. The other piece of all of that is taking a look at curricular, co-curricular, and extracurricular activities here on campus and saying what's happened in the classroom should continue outside of the classroom in concert with it. But there are other opportunities like on-campus jobs and internships that are going to be totally outside of the academic realm, but that will continue to further develop both those life skills and those core competencies.
So out of curiosity, out of those core competencies, I'm sure every year you see a shift in how much each sort of year is exploring and relaying those competencies. What out of all the competencies, what do you see as the most challenged competency for the students and the one where they excel the most?
So the one that challenges them the most is career and self-development, because a big piece of that is self-awareness. And when you consider an incoming freshman who's 18 years old, they don't have that depth and breadth of life skills to really be self-aware, know who they are. Their brains are still developing just on a physical basis. So career and self-development is probably the most challenging for them. The one that they really embrace and are quite good at is technology, particularly students of today. I mean, it's a first language for them. So any new technology that we roll out, we don't even have to provide training or instruction on it. The students see it if it's developed well, and all of our technology is with outside external experts and partners. They engage with it, and we get very few questions on the functionality of it. We'll get questions on content. But from a technology standpoint, they're really adept at that piece of it. And in some cases, probably too adept. So how do you divorce them from the technology and have that bridge with, say, teamwork or interpersonal skills or social emotional intelligence? So there are challenges on both sides, but in terms of them embracing the competencies, I would say challenging is the self-awareness piece. Most adept at is technology.
Right. And then, how do you offer practical advice for those kids who are having difficulty with sort of relaying that and sort of, the 18-year-olds? And do you just kind of wait it out? Like, oh, by senior year, you'll be totally fine. Or, hopefully, how do you talk to these students, and how do you educate these students to be like, okay, you're having issues in this department. How do I use my skills as a professional, to navigate you?
Right. And quite honestly, not trying to sound too cliche, but it takes a village. So, we have at UCONN this new strategic plan where everybody who is engaging with students should have this awareness of what are we trying to impart? What is the skill set? How do we articulate that? Do we have a common language that we're talking to them about that? And then from there, if I'm a student athlete, I'm probably most aligned with my strength training coach or my head coach or an assistant coach. I'm going to go to them for advice about not only my sport, but my career, my classes, those types of things. So those individuals need to be schooled in it. Professors and those who are standing up in front of a classroom or through technology teaching coursework on the academic side need to understand that. And then it's not only career services, career development, or the career readiness department. It's their RA, it's their residential life. It's all the different components. We provide resources for students to assess themselves so they can do a self-assessment through Work Plus, which is our jobs program on campus that's just rolling out. Their supervisor can provide assessment for them. So there are a variety of different ways, methods, and places where students can go to help them develop in these core skills. Again, some of it's going to happen in the classroom. Some of it's going to happen as a co-curricular part of the coursework, but outside of the classroom. And some of it's going to happen independently on campus through, we have 600 clubs and activities for students. So they're engaged. And quite honestly, this particular student profile that we're seeing today, they're learning from one another. So they're engaged with their near peer mentors. So freshmen are looking to seniors. Sophomores are looking to potentially either other sophomores who may be more advanced in one of the core competencies than they are. So it's not really a one-stop answer. It's really developing a culture and an environment of career readiness so that students have every opportunity to develop those things. And although there's not, an emotional intelligence component specifically in the 8 core competencies, it's woven throughout all of them. So there's communication, there's self-awareness, there's teamwork, there's leadership. And a component of all of those is the social emotional intelligence component.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, it's so important to educate students today on all of those components. Do you know if UCONN is the only school doing that, or are there other universities that are sort of jumping on board? Because it feels like, a lot of these programs haven't really been enacted until we saw a huge lack of students having this and sort of the detriments that it caused the workforce.
Right.
We're kind of thinking like retroactively in a lot of these departments. Do you see this sort of, need for civility and social emotional learning becoming bigger with time and your department expanding and this sort of like program being instituted in other universities?
So we are seeing examples of it in other institutions around the country. We've always been early adopters on these types of things. So we're at the forefront, really forging the path for what does this look like. And a lot of what we're doing right now is either expanding on past pilots or creating new pilot programs in order to expand these offerings. There are other institutions out there who have put a stake in the ground around, student wellness and emotional well-being and those types of things. So every student and institution has kind of their own culture. But we've always, particularly here at the Center for Career Readiness and Life Skills, really tried to be at the forefront of what is the next trend that's coming up and how can we get ahead of that? Because if we're always following, our students are always falling behind. So it's always about being in front of the pack, being really proactive. We actually created a career champion program about 5.5 years ago. And basically what that was a program that we could help develop faculty, staff, alumni, and employers on what are the 8 core competencies. If you're talking with a student, how do you advise them? What services does the Center for Career Development and now Center for Career Readiness offer that you could refer students to? I'm happy to say that we currently have the largest career champions program in the nation. And we've won both national and global recognition through awards. Most recently, the Ernst & Young Global Career Services Award for faculty engagement through the Career Champions program. So while others are doing it, we're kind of at the forefront of it, but we're also learning from others. So our Work Plus program, which is really aimed at taking on-campus student jobs and turning them into meaningful internships, we're leveraging the past success of Arizona State University, who's been running that program for several years now. So we've partnered with them and about 9 other institutions across the nation to make sure that when we roll this out, even in pilot stage, we're leveraging off best practices of other institutions. So yeah, it's happening in different places. I wouldn't say it's a movement yet. I wouldn't say it's really even an expectation yet from a lot of institutions. But what I do know is that students and their support networks are saying, we want our student to go to X university and thrive and be prepared or career ready when they graduate for whatever their plans are post-graduation, whether that's an advanced degree or seeking employment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that you have this program as someone who is far out of college at this point in their life and who have friends who are also, out of college. The job market is so daunting for a lot of kids, and especially my sister is just fresh out of college too, and she's having a little difficulty with that. What strategies do you recommend for students who are feeling, overwhelmed or anxious about their job search and not getting any hits? I mean, hopefully they can sort of like get into an internship while they're in college or out of college. But if they don't have those resources, what's guidance do you have for those students, and also keeping their, integrity intact and their civility and not, just sort of like blowing a gasket,
There's a ton to unpack there. And, unfortunately, and something that we do, and we're doing it right now over the course of this summer, is we're engaging with students before they even come onto campus as a freshman. So they spend an overnight here and spend 2 whole days as part of their orientation. Part of that orientation is coming to the Center for Career Readiness and Life Skills to understand what the expectations are over the next 4 years, and what they can do and what resources are available to them. And then the next step, and I just call it hit them early and often, and just keep repeating the messaging. So what's most disconcerting to me is if I meet somebody who's been here for 3 or 4 years and says, oh, I never knew the Career Center existed, that you had services to help me. Sort of like, where have you been for the past 4 years? We email you on a weekly basis with resources. We, advertise all over campus about career fairs and open houses and employers who are on campus looking for student talent. We have you, engaged with us through your on-campus job. How could you have not known? So it's really difficult to engage with somebody who's been here for 3 or 4 years who says, now I need to start thinking about my career. It's not too late. So, one of the things we do is help them with the tools. What tools are at your disposal? And what I hear over and over and over again, and my team hears on a regular basis was, I applied to 100 jobs and didn't get any responses. Well, if you're just out there on Indeed or one of those platforms applying blindly for jobs, you're probably not going to get the hits that you need. So job search, whether you're, early career talent right out of college or you're a seasoned professional, is all about having a plan, is all about executing the plan and leveraging the skills and tools you have at your disposal to enact that plan. So I was meeting with an alumni just earlier today, and one of the questions I asked, because she was a little bit frustrated in her job search, was, who are your target companies? What companies have you targeted that you've researched that you really see yourself fitting in? And she said, well, I'll work anywhere. And I was like, okay, so there's a difference between this scattershot approach of anything that comes my way, I'll explore, versus saying, I'm going to focus on these 10 companies. If other ones come along, that's fine. I can engage in those conversations. But now I'm going to look to who in my network works at those companies, who in my graduating class through LinkedIn or one of the other tools that we have at their disposal, could I reach out to and say, not I want a job, but I want to talk to you about opportunities in your organization, and who else in your organization should I be talking to? So there's a real methodology around job search and career management. And we've provided students with all of the resources to do that. Some students intuitively just grab onto it, utilize the resources, understand it. Others need a little bit more coaching and a little bit more help. So if we can give it to them, great. If one of the career champions, because they've been trained on it, can give it to them, great. If somebody else within their network can give that to them equally great. I don't care where they get it, as long as they get it. And students who go to UCONN have access to our online resources indefinitely. They have access to working with us one-on-one for up to 3 years post-graduation. So we continue to provide that support for them on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's the gift of intention. I feel like when you're I remember when I was in college, I was like, I don't even know, even after college, and we had career centers and I still didn't know, and so I feel like giving your students that gift of intention is so nice, because you can also tell your students, like, okay, maybe this year, for the next 2 years, you'll be at Warner Brothers, and the next 2 years you'll go, maybe you want to be a nurse after that.
Right.
So it's nice to be able to tell your students and just people in general, like, you can shift. My mom just shifted to being a massage therapist at like 52,
Right.
so it's kind of having that intention, I think, is really important.
Well, and that's also the beauty of establishing these core competencies, because they're transferable. It's not like I went to school to become an accountant and that's all I did, and now I can create a wicked spreadsheet, but I can't work collaboratively with anybody else, because that's a muscle and a skill that has to be developed. I was never given the opportunity to do that. So I think the modern college campus really provides opportunities for students to engage in activities that help them develop their core competencies. And they might not develop them to the level of mastery by the time they graduate, but at least they'll have a core foundation of what it means to be self-aware, what it means to work on a team, how incivility can erode teamwork and productive team outcomes. So it's
Right.
all of those nuances that are built into it. And again, I think if you go back 10, 15, 20 years ago, Career Center's jobs was to be in a basement in some remote building and help students create a resume.
Right.
Now, Career Centers are front and forward. Just 10 years ago, about 90, I think it was 92% of Career Centers actually set in student services. So that was the division that took care of dining and feeding and mental health and wellness and all those other types of things. Now it's less than 40%. So career services has migrated out of a service kind of provider into either academic affairs, president's offices, alumni affairs, foundation, so that they can be more inclusive in terms of leveraging the collective of the institution for the holistic development of the student, as opposed to just, we're here to do a resume.
Right.
And again, I think we probably still list resume development on our list of what we offer, but it's not at the top of the list anymore.
Right. I mean, you're building well-rounded students.
Right.
You want them to be, and retaining things too. You might have an engineer student in a wellness class and be like, what am I doing here? But it's like at the end of the class, you want to, hope that they retain something of that class so it carries on into something else.
Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of a place like UConn, because all students have a broad liberal arts education base, whether they're a nursing student or an engineering student or a history or fine arts, whatever it happens to be. They all have that core curriculum that is their liberal arts base. And then they have their specialty on top of that. And then they have all of these wonderful opportunities that they can engage in to build up those core skills that employers are looking for and saying are so essential in well-rounded new hires to fill their talent pipeline. So employers at this point in time are not saying, we are looking specifically for students who exhibit emotional intelligence. That's not one of their criteria. But what they are saying is the number one reason students aren't successful, either in an internship or within the first 3 to 6 months of a new job post-graduation, is because they lack those emotional intelligence skills. So they're not working well with others. They're not communicating well with their boss. They're not employing all of the I don't even want to call them social graces, because they're not really even social graces. They're life skills now. And when you question employers on that and ask them to define it, they're like, I can't really put my finger on it, but this individual new hire just didn't get it. And when you start digging a little deeper, it's like, what do you mean they didn't get it? They didn't have the technical skills? Oh, no, they were brilliant on the technical side. Well, what didn't they get? Well, they didn't work well with others. They didn't communicate well with their super. Like then they start naming off all the different things that fully fall into the bucket of emotional intelligence. So we're seeing that as a big reason for students not succeeding. I would say that industry is probably a year or two off from saying we're actually creating interviewing modalities that will uncover whether or not a student has that level of emotional intelligence that we're expecting them to bring into our workplace, because that's what fits in our culture.
Right. Yeah, I mean, teaching those skills is a life, even adults in their, like having active listening, compassion, empathy, being able to, those are skills people search a lifetime to achieve. And, teaching these skills to college students is just probably very rewarding and difficult at the same time.
Yeah, it's difficult, it's rewarding. And the one caveat I would put on that is that while we're teaching them these things, we're really providing a foundation for them to build off of. Because I really don't expect any student to graduate, not only UConn, any institution across the country, and have mastery in any of these things.
Right.
I talk to students who are, 10 years out and they're alum now, and they're thinking of buying their first home or, whatever it happens to be. And they're like, they never taught me this. Like, I knew basics, or even better yet, talking to a student who just got their first paycheck and they go, look how much they took out in taxes. Like, why is that a surprise? So,
Right.
from a financial literacy standpoint, I think we owe it to them to give them the fundamentals, but they're not going to need the extended life view of what financial planning is all about when they're a college student. It's just not going to resonate. So we provide the core skill set and foundation for them to build on as they engage in their next job or in graduate school or whatever it happens to be.
Right. Yeah. That's funny you said that about surprises. I feel like I encountered so many surprises after college. Like, no one told me that
Right.
my paycheck would be half. No one told me about healthcare. No one told me about any of this. So,
Right.
yeah.
And the reality is that there is, an economic divide there from an equity standpoint as well. So, in a lot of cases, and not all, but in many cases, first generation students don't have the generation before them to educate them on those things. Whereas other students might have the luxury of a family member who can impart that kind of knowledge. So as we take a look at, the percentages of first gen students, the percentages of international students who might not have somebody outside of the university environment to help them establish what they need to know around those things, then becomes kind of incumbent on us to say, we've identified these 5 life skills. We're going to provide services around them. We've identified these 8 core competencies. We're going to build them into our curriculum. We're going to build them into all the different things that we do as we engage with you, so that when you are ready to graduate and move on to your next step in your career journey, you'll at least have a grounding and functional understanding of those things, as opposed to walking out and not knowing about them at all.
Right. Yeah. So for our last question, since we're running out of time, our listeners and myself included would love to know, what are some of the most rewarding aspects of your work, and what advice would you give to someone who is trying to pursue career in career services or higher education here in it now?
So I will tell you, the absolutely most rewarding thing that I see is, and again, it's because I've been at UConn and working with students for 13, 14 years now, is when I go into one of our career fairs, and we have about 7 or 8 a year. And our big one is in the fall, and we draw about close to 300 employers come to campus over the course of 2 days. About 3,500 students attend. But I'll be walking through the career fair floor in Gamble Pavilion, and somebody will say, Jim. And I always put a smile on my face and I say, oh, hi, how are you? I figured they know me. I must know them. And they say, remember me? I was a student in one of your workshops 8 years ago. And now I'm an employer hiring UConn. So they're paying it forward. That's just a really good feeling to know that work that you did impacted somebody's life. They remember who you are. and they're coming back to UCONN to pay it back and hire more UCONN students. So there's nothing more rewarding than that. So that's number one. In terms of individuals who want to get into the field of career services, it's not really the type of field that there are a lot of entry-level positions, because a career coach or a career consultant really needs some sort of life experience to be able to coach others on that. And I'm not saying they need tons of it, but I would say that if somebody wants to get into a career services kind of role or function, the HR avenue is a great avenue to come through. The business side is a great avenue to come through. But really the caveat over all of that is you need to really have a deep desire to want to, number one, work intimately with people, in this case, students. And number two, you need to have the ability to really sit back, listen, understand, take stock before you make recommendations. So, if you're the type of fix-it person, tell me a problem, I'll tell you how to fix it. This is probably not the field for you. This is a field of really taking a step back and understanding not only individual students, but the collective student experience, because my role right now is I don't meet regularly with students. My work is all around strategy. My work is all around identifying employment trends and what programs do we need to implement to ensure that students have the skill set to capitalize on those types of opportunities. But if you don't have that kind of lens of, what is in the best interest of the student, and it's all about just getting them a job, because it's not about getting them that first job. It's about setting them up for life success with a career plan, and knowing that the plan is probably not going to work, that you're going to have the nimbleness and agility to kind of retrench, bob, weave, like you said with your mother, recreate yourself, but really setting them up with a strong foundation for doing all those types of things. If that's what really gets you up in the morning and excited about going to work, this is probably a profession that's good for you. If you're looking for immediate results in something, it's just going to frustrate you no end, because there are no immediate results. It's really a long-term game.
Yeah. And I mean, it allows you also, if you love your job and you are enjoying the happiness that you receive, you're probably more able to conduct yourself with civility, and that's really important to do that. It's so much easier for any students who are listening, it's so much easier to conduct yourself with grace and civility and poise when you love what you do. There's less frustration, anxiety. So that's so important.
And I think a big one too is empathy, really understanding what they're going through, and putting yourself kind of in that mindset so that you can really relate to them, as opposed to, no, you did this wrong, this is the way you need to do it. It's more, I understand your frustration. Lots of folks go through that same type of thing. We have the tools and resources to help and assist you with that. And here's how we're going to develop this plan together. So I think there's a lot of that as well.
Together. Love that word.
Yes.
That needs to be integrated into livelihood. But anyways, thank you, Jen, for sharing your insights on, your job, career readiness, and, the importance of civility in the workplace. And to our listeners, don't forget to visit www.civiltalk.com for more resources and information on our initiatives. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more episodes. And don't forget to join us on our mission to promote civility in the modern world. Thank you so much again, Jim Lowe. It was lovely meeting you.
Same here, Tapasio. Thanks so much for the time and the engaging dialogue. I really did appreciate it. You be well and stay safe.
You as well. Thank you. Bye.